A knock at the door in the middle of a deadly snowstorm. A half-frozen child who speaks no English. And one word that changes everything. Discover how an unexpected bond forms between two lost souls on the harsh frontier. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like this story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The harsh winter wind howled across the Arizona territory of 1878, rattling the wooden shutters of Martha Wilson's modest homestead. At 52, Martha had lived alone for 3 years since her husband Thomas succumbed to pneumonia. Their small ranch, nestled in a valley 20 miles from the nearest town of Whispering Pines, had once been filled with laughter and dreams. Now only silence accompanied her daily chores. Martha stoked the fire in her stone hearth, watching embers leap toward the chimney. The blizzard had raged for 2 days, unusual even for January in this region. She wrapped a woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders, finding comfort in its familiar weight, the last Christmas gift Thomas had given her. Another night alone, she whispered to the crackling flames. The isolation weighed heavier in winter, when snow made the already infrequent visits from neighbors impossible. A sudden noise from outside startled her, different from the wind's persistent moan. Martha froze, listening intently. There it was again, a weak thumping against her door. Who would be out in such weather? She muttered, reaching for the rifle Thomas had taught her to use. Bandits sometimes prowled these parts, preying on isolated homesteads. Martha approached the door cautiously. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No answer came, only another feeble thump. Taking a deep breath, Martha unlatched the door, pointing her rifle into the darkness. The wind immediately forced the door wider, bringing with it a swirl of snow and revealing a small crumpled figure on her porch. "Good Lord," Martha gasped, lowering her weapon. A child no more than 8 or 9 years old lay half-frozen at her threshold. The girl's dark hair was crusted with ice, her copper skin blue-tinged from cold. She wore tattered clothing wholly insufficient for the bitter weather, and blood had frozen on a wound across her forehead. Martha recognized immediately that the child was Apache. Relations between settlers and native tribes remained tense in the territory, with violent encounters still common. But Martha had never shared the prejudices of many settlers. Thomas had taught her better. "Child, what happened to you?" Martha whispered, kneeling beside the girl. Receiving no response, she set her rifle aside and gently lifted the unconscious child, surprised at how little she weighed. Carrying her inside, Martha kicked the door shut against the howling wind. She placed the girl near the fire, quickly gathering blankets and her precious store of medicines. As Martha cleaned the wound on the girl's forehead, the child stirred, dark eyes fluttering open with fear and confusion. Martha soothed, "You're safe now." The girl tried to scramble away, speaking rapidly in her native tongue words. Martha couldn't understand. She held up empty hands to show she meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," Martha said softly. "You're hurt and half-frozen. Please let me help." Something in Martha's tone must have conveyed her sincerity for the girl. Stop trying to escape, though wariness remained in her eyes. Martha slowly reached for a cup of water, offering it to the child, who hesitated before accepting it with trembling hands. After drinking deeply, the girl studied Martha's face. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke a single word in halting English. "Cold." "Yes," Martha nodded, wrapping another blanket around the small shoulders. "Very cold. But you're warming up now." As Martha continued tending to her, the girl occasionally murmured words in her native language. One word she repeated several times, looking directly at Martha: "Shima." Martha didn't know its meaning, but responded with a gentle smile. "I'm Martha," she said, pointing to herself. "Martha Wilson." The girl nodded slightly, then whispered, "Nasha." "Nasha," Martha repeated. That's your name?" The child nodded again before her eyes grew heavy. Martha continued her ministrations until Nasha drifted into sleep, exhaustion claiming her dot as the blizzard raged outside. Martha settled into her rocking chair beside the fire, watching over the mysterious child who had literally fallen at her doorstep. Questions tumbled through her mind. Where had the girl come from? What had happened to her family? How had she survived the blizzard long enough to reach Martha's isolated homestead? "I'll keep you safe," Martha whispered to the sleeping child, feeling a long-dormant maternal instinct stirring within her. She and Thomas had never been blessed with children, a sorrow that had shadowed their otherwise happy marriage. Now watching Nasha's chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep, Martha felt an unexpected connection forming, tenuous yet somehow profound. Outside, the wind continued its mournful song, but inside, Martha no longer felt alone. Morning arrived with blinding whiteness as sunlight reflected off fresh snow. Martha had dozed intermittently in her chair, waking often to check on Nasha. The girl still slept, her breathing stronger now, color returning to her face. Martha moved quietly around the cabin, preparing cornmeal porridge and brewing coffee. The familiar routine brought comfort, though everything felt different with another presence in her home. As she stirred the porridge, Martha heard a soft rustling. Turning, she found Nasha watching her with cautious eyes. "Good morning, Martha," said gently. "Are you hungry?" Nasha didn't respond verbally, but her gaze shifted to the pot of porridge, and she gave a small nod. Martha filled a bowl, adding a drizzle of precious honey before bringing it to the girl. Nasha accepted it warily, sniffing the contents before taking a tentative spoonful. Hunger quickly overcame caution, and she began eating with greater urgency. "Slowly now," Martha cautioned. "Your stomach needs time." As if understanding, Nasha slowed her pace. When she finished, she looked up at Martha and spoke softly, "Ahehe." Then, after a moment's hesitation, she added, "Thank you." Martha smiled. "You speak some English?" "Little," Nasha confirmed, forming a small space between her thumb and index finger. "Father teach." The mention of her father caused Nasha's expression to darken. Martha noticed immediately. "Your father, is he nearby?" "Your family?" she asked gently. Nasha's eyes filled with tears. "Soldiers come, many guns." She made shooting motions with her hands. "Mother tell me run, hide." Her voice broke. "I run, run, snow come, lost." Martha's heart sank. The girl's story was tragically familiar in these territories, another clash between soldiers and native people, with innocent lives caught in between. "How long were you out there?" Martha asked. Nasha held up 2 fingers. 2 sleeps. Martha marveled that the child had survived 2 days in the blizzard. "And you found my cabin. See smoke," Nasha explained. "Walk to smoke." Martha nodded, understanding now. Her chimney smoke had guided the girl through the storm, a beacon of hope in desperate circumstances. Nasha's gaze drifted around the cabin, taking in the sparse but tidy furnishings, the photographs on the mantel, the patchwork quilt on Martha's bed. Her eyes lingered on a framed tintype of Martha and Thomas on their wedding day. "Man?" she asked, pointing to Thomas's image. "My husband," Martha explained. "Thomas, he passed on. Died 3 winters ago." Nasha nodded with solemn understanding. "Beyond her years, like my people now." The simple statement held such profound grief that Martha felt her own eyes growing moist. Without thinking, she moved to sit beside Nasha, gently placing an arm around the thin shoulders. To her surprise, the girl didn't pull away, but leaned slightly into the embrace. "Shima," Nasha whispered again, looking up at Martha. "What does that word mean?" Martha asked softly. "You said it last night too. Means mother," Nasha explained. "You like ... Shima now." Martha felt something break and mend simultaneously in her heart. This child, orphaned by violence, had chosen to trust her, to see her as a mother figure, despite the vast differences between them. "I'm honored," Martha whispered, her voice thick with emotion. They sat in silence for a moment, before Nasha pointed to her own forehead, where Martha had bandaged the wound. "You heal?" Martha nodded. "I tried my best. Does it hurt much?" "Little," Nasha admitted. "Had worse." The matter-of-fact statement from one so young caused Martha's throat to tighten. What had this child endured in her short life? What now? Nasha asked suddenly, her eyes serious. "Soldiers find me here?" The question forced Martha to confront reality. Harboring an Apache child, especially one who might be sought by the military, could bring danger to them both. But looking into Nasha's trusting eyes, Martha knew she couldn't turn her away. "You'll stay here," Martha declared firmly. "Until you're completely well. Then ... We'll figure things out together." Nasha studied Martha's face, searching for deception or uncertainty. Finding none, she nodded once. "Together." Outside, the snow continued falling softly, building drifts that effectively isolated the cabin from the outside world. Martha recognized, this is a blessing. It would give them time. Time for Nasha to heal. Time for Martha to plan. Time for them to learn to trust one another more deeply. "Can you teach me?" Martha asked suddenly. "Teach what?" Nasha looked puzzled. "Your language, a few words at least." "If I'm to be your Shima for now, I should learn." A smile, the first Martha had seen, transformed Nasha's solemn face. The girl straightened, suddenly eager. "I teach. You learn good?" "I'll try my very best," Martha promised, returning the smile. As the day progressed, Martha tended to her usual chores, while Nasha rested and occasionally offered Apache words. For common objects, Billy for the blanket, K for the fire, T for water. Martha repeated each one carefully, earning nods of approval or gentle corrections from her young teacher. By evening, as they shared a simple supper of beans and cornbread, the tension in Nasha's small body had noticeably eased. Though still watchful, she no longer started at every sound or held herself ready to flee at any moment. Progress, Martha thought. Small steps toward trust. That night, when Martha prepared to sleep, Nasha hesitated by the fire, unsure of her place. "You can share my bed," Martha offered. "Plenty of room for us both." Nasha considered this, then nodded. As they settled beneath the heavy quilts, Martha was reminded sharply of how she'd once imagined tucking a child of her own into bed. The thought brought both pain and unexpected joy. "Good night, Nasha," she whispered. "Hago ni shiji," Nasha murmured sleepily. "What does that mean?" Martha asked. "Good night, my heart," Nasha translated. Already drifting toward sleep, Martha lay awake long after, listening to the child's steady breathing, feeling a fierce protectiveness growing within her. Whatever came next, she knew her life had irrevocably changed, and somehow, against all odds, she'd been given a second chance at motherhood in the most unexpected way. A week passed, then two. The worst of winter's fury gradually eased, though snow still blanketed the landscape, creating a pristine isolation around Martha's homestead. During this time, a tentative rhythm developed between the unlikely pair. Nasha's physical wounds healed quickly, though Martha often noticed her waking from nightmares, crying out in her native tongue. On those nights, Martha would hold the trembling child, humming lullabies her own mother had once sung to her. As Nasha's strength returned, she began helping with chores, feeding the chickens Martha kept in a small coop attached to the cabin, kneading dough for bread, even learning to card wool from Martha's small flock of sheep sheltered in the barn. The language lessons continued in both directions. Martha now knew dozens of Apache words, while Nasha's English improved daily. Their conversations grew longer and more complex, revealing Nasha's quick intelligence and observant nature. "Why you live alone?" Nasha asked one afternoon as they worked together at the table. Martha mending a shirt while Nasha sorted dried beans. Martha considered how to answer. After Thomas, my husband, died, I didn't want to leave our home. We built it together. His memory lives here. Nasha nodded thoughtfully. My people say spirits of ancestors stay in special places. Watch over us. That's similar to what many of my people believe too, Martha replied, finding comfort in the shared concept. You have no children before me? Nasha asked innocently. Martha's hand stilled. No, she said softly. We wanted children very much, but it wasn't meant to be. Nasha absorbed this information. So we both lost family, she concluded. Now, found new family. Martha felt tears prick her eyes at the simple truth of the statement. Yes, she agreed. We have, but reality couldn't be held at bay forever. As February arrived with milder temperatures, Martha knew decisions would soon need to be made. The snow was melting. The trails would clear. Eventually, someone would come, a neighbor checking on her, a traveling peddler, or perhaps something more ominous. Martha had heard rumors of cavalry patrols searching for Apache survivors from several bands that had resisted relocation to the San Carlos reservation. If Nasha's people had been among those groups, soldiers might still be looking for survivors. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Martha broached the subject gently. Nasha, we need to talk about what happens when spring comes. The girl looked up from the small wooden horse she was whittling, a skill Thomas had taught Martha, which she had passed on to Nasha. Wariness immediately returned to her eyes. You send me away? She asked, her voice carefully controlled, though Martha detected the fear beneath. No, Martha said firmly, never willingly. But we must be practical. People will start traveling again when the snow melts. Questions will be asked about you. Nasha's shoulders tensed. Soldiers take Apache children sometimes. Send to far school. Cut hair, no Apache talk allowed. Martha nodded grimly. She knew of the Indian boarding schools, places where native children were forced to abandon their culture and language. The thought of vibrant, intelligent Nasha in such a place made Martha's blood run cold. I won't let that happen, she promised, though she wasn't entirely sure how she would prevent it. A widow living alone had limited power against government policy. Nasha set aside her carving and moved to sit beside Martha, leaning against her. I have plan, she said quietly. Martha looked down, surprised. What plan? We say I your child, from before. Say I born from you and Apache father who died. Say you find me again. Martha blinked, considering the audacity of the suggestion. That's a complicated story. People might not believe it. You respected, Nasha countered. People trust you. I learn good English. Learn your ways, but keep Apache heart inside. She placed a hand over her chest. Best way. Martha marveled at the child's strategic thinking. The plan had merit, though it would require careful execution. Martha had lived in relative isolation for years, making only occasional trips to town. Few knew the details of her earlier life. A carefully constructed story might indeed be believed, especially if they avoided close scrutiny. We'd need to get your papers in order, Martha mused, thinking aloud. A birth certificate of some kind. And you'd need a Christian name for official purposes, though you'd always be Nasha to me. What name you give me? Nasha asked, seeming open to the idea. Martha thought for a moment. Perhaps Sarah? It was my mother's name. Sarah, Nasha repeated, testing the sound. Sarah Wilson, she nodded decisively. Good name for town. Nasha name for home. Martha felt a swell of emotion at hearing the girl so casually adopt her surname. It made their fabricated relationship feel suddenly more real. There's a judge in Whispering Pines, Martha said. Judge Hamilton, he's a fair man. If we tell him our situation, he might help with the necessary documents. He not tell soldiers? Nasha asked anxiously. I saved his wife's life 2 winters ago when she had fever. He owes me a favor, Martha explained. And not everyone supports the government's policies toward your people. There are those who believe in justice, even for the Apache. Nasha considered. This then asked the question Martha had been avoiding. What if real family still alive? Some might escape soldiers. Martha felt a pang of guilt. In focusing on their future together, she had pushed aside the possibility that Nasha might have surviving relatives searching for her. If that's the case, Martha said carefully, you should be with them. I wouldn't keep you from your blood family. Nasha frowned. You my family now too. Blood not only thing that makes family. You're right, Martha agreed, touched by the wisdom in the child's words. But we should at least try to learn if any of your people survived. You deserve to know. Nasha nodded slowly. How we find out? There's a man, a half-Mexican trader named Miguel Vasquez, who travels between settlements and reservations. He knows many of the Apache bands. When he comes through in spring, we could ask him to make inquiries, discreetly. And if no family left? Nasha pressed. Martha took the girl's small hands in hers. Then you stay with me for as long as you wish. We'll make it official, however we can. Nasha seemed satisfied with this answer. She retrieved her carving and resumed work, her movements more relaxed now that a plan had been discussed. Martha watched her, marveling at how this child who had endured unimaginable trauma could adapt and plan for the future with such resilience. In just a few weeks, Nasha had transformed Martha's solitary existence, bringing purpose and connection back into her life. Outside, the first hints of spring revealed themselves in longer days and the occasional drip of melting icicles. Change was coming, bringing both opportunity and danger. Martha knew their path forward wouldn't be easy in a world that often rejected relationships like theirs. But watching Nasha's deft hands shape wood into art, Martha felt a determination stronger than any she'd known since Thomas died. They would find a way forward together. This unexpected family formed in the depths of winter. March arrived with unpredictable weather, warm sunshine, followed by sudden snowstorms that reminded everyone winter wasn't quite finished. The main trails cleared enough for travel, and Martha knew their period of peaceful isolation would soon end. She began preparing Nasha for eventual interactions with others, teaching her the customs and expectations that would help her pass as Martha's long-lost daughter in the eyes of suspicious neighbors and officials. Remember, when others are present, you must call me Mother, not Shima, Martha reminded as they worked together in the vegetable garden, preparing soil for spring planting. I remember, Nasha replied, her English now flowing more smoothly. After weeks of daily practice. And I was born in a place called Santa Fe, to you and my father, who was a scout for the army. Martha nodded. That's right. And if anyone asks about your complexion, you say my father was half Apache, half Mexican. A good man who died honorably, Nasha recited. You sent me to live with his sister when you fell ill, but she died this winter, so I returned to you. Good, Martha said, impressed by how quickly Nasha had memorized their fabricated history. And remember, some people might not be kind about your heritage. They might say hurtful things. Nasha's expression hardened. Slightly. I know how white people can be. My father warned me long ago. Martha felt a pang at the reminder of Nasha's real father, a man who had taught his daughter English, perhaps anticipating she would need it to survive in a changing world. He must have been a forward-thinking man, like her Thomas. Not all white people think the same way, Martha said gently. Just as not all Apache are the same. We must judge each person by their own actions. Nasha considered this, then nodded. Like you different. I try to be, Martha said. Thomas taught me to see beyond what others say, to look with my own eyes and heart. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Both froze, exchanging alarmed glances. They weren't expecting visitors. Go inside, Martha instructed calmly, though her heart raced. Remember what we practiced. Nasha nodded and quickly disappeared into the cabin. Martha continued working, feigning normalcy while straining to identify the approaching rider. As the horse and rider came into view, Martha's tension eased slightly. It was Miguel Vasquez, the trader she had mentioned to Nasha earlier than expected, but a welcome sight nonetheless. His mule-drawn wagon followed behind him, loaded with goods to trade. "Senora Wilson," he called, raising his hat in greeting. "Survived another winter, I see." "Just barely, Miguel," she replied with a practiced smile. "You're the first visitor of the season." Miguel dismounted, tying his horse to the fence post. "The pass is cleared sooner than expected. Thought I'd make my rounds early this year." He glanced toward her cabin. "Heard some interesting stories over the winter. Thought you might want news." Martha's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "What kind of news?" Miguel lowered his voice. "There was trouble with some Apache bands north of here in January. Army went in hard after some warriors raided a settlement. Messy business. That's terrible," Martha said carefully. "Were there many casualties?" "On both sides," Miguel confirmed grimly. "Most of the Apache were killed or captured. A few escaped into the mountains. Army still looking for stragglers." He paused, studying her face. "Interesting thing, though. One of the bands had a respected medicine woman. Some say she had powerful dreams, foresaw the attack, and sent her granddaughter away before the soldiers came. Army's particularly keen to find that child." Martha felt cold, despite the spring sunshine. Why would they want a child? Miguel shrugged. "The official story is concern for orphan children. Unofficially, some believe the girl has knowledge of sacred places, caves, where her people have hidden for generations. The Army wants those locations." Before Martha could respond, the cabin door opened, and Nasha stepped out, playing her role perfectly. "Mother," she called, using the English word rather than Shima. "Shall I start preparing lunch for our guest?" Miguel turned, surprise evident on his weathered face as he took in the sight of the young girl. "Miguel, this is my daughter Sarah," Martha said smoothly. "She's recently come to live with me after her aunt passed away this winter." Recognition flickered briefly in Miguel's eyes, quickly masked. He was no fool and had clearly connected certain dots, but he simply removed his hat and bowed slightly to Nasha. "Pleased to meet you, Senorita Sarah. Your mother is a fine woman." "Thank you, sir," Nasha replied politely, her practiced English careful and measured. "She speaks highly of you as well." "Why don't you go ahead and start lunch, Sarah?" Martha suggested. "Mr. Vasquez and I have some trading to discuss." Once Nasha had returned inside, Miguel turned to Martha with raised eyebrows. "Your daughter?" he asked quietly. Martha met his gaze steadily. "Yes, my late husband and I were separated from her for some years. Family circumstances, you understand." Miguel nodded slowly. "I understand many things, Senora. Including that. Some matters are better left unquestioned." He glanced toward the cabin. "The girl seems well adjusted, happy even." "She is," Martha confirmed, "and I intend to keep her that way." Miguel regarded her thoughtfully. "The Army patrols will be coming through these parts soon, looking for certain individuals. We have nothing to hide," Martha said firmly. "Just a widow and her daughter trying to make a life." Miguel reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a sealed envelope. "Judge Hamilton in town asked me to deliver this if I saw you. Said it was important papers you'd requested." Martha accepted the envelope, recognizing the official seal of the territorial court. Inside would be the documentation they needed, birth certificates and affidavits that would establish Nasha's new identity as Sarah Wilson. The judge had worked quickly. "Thank you," she said sincerely. Miguel lowered his voice further. "One more piece of information you might find relevant. There are rumors of a small group of Apache, perhaps a dozen, who escaped the massacre. They've reportedly crossed into Mexico, beyond the army's reach, led by an elder called Tall Hawk. Nasha had never mentioned names of her family members, but Martha filed away this information. It might be important someday. I appreciate your discretion, Miguel, Martha said meaningfully. We all have secrets, Senora, he replied. And sometimes doing what's right means looking beyond what's lawful. He glanced again toward the cabin. The girl has Apache eyes, wise eyes. She would not have survived without a purpose. Martha felt a chill at his words. What do you mean? The old ones believe certain children are born to bridge worlds, to learn both ways of living and bring understanding. He shrugged. Just stories, perhaps. But I've seen enough in my travels to believe there's truth in old wisdom. Their conversation shifted to trading as Nasha, now officially Sarah, to the outside world, brought out coffee, and invited Miguel to stay for lunch. The trader accepted, treating the girl with a natural respect that put Martha at ease. He would keep their secret. After Miguel departed, promising to return in a month with more supplies, Martha showed Nasha the papers from Judge Hamilton. The girl traced her new name with her finger, her expression solemn. These papers say I your daughter by law now, she observed. Yes, Martha confirmed. As far as the territory of Arizona is concerned, you are Sarah Wilson, born to Martha and Thomas. Wilson. Nasha looked up. But I still Nasha inside, still Apache. Always, Martha assured her. This paper doesn't change who you are, only how the world sees you. It's protection, nothing more. Nasha nodded, seeming satisfied. Miguel know truth. She stated rather than asked. Yes, Martha admitted. But he won't tell anyone. He's a good man. He say some my people escaped to Mexico? Hope tinged Nasha's voice for the first time since she'd arrived. He mentioned rumors, Martha said carefully. Nothing certain. But yes, there's a possibility some survived. Nasha was quiet for a long moment. Someday, when older, I find them, but not leave you, she added quickly. You my family too now. Martha felt tears threatening. We'll face that decision when the time comes, she said. For now, we focus on building our life here, together. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and crimson, Martha reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 months ago, she had been a lonely widow facing another empty year. Now she was a mother, not in the way she had once imagined, but perhaps in the way the universe had intended all along. Beside her, Nasha worked on a beaded bracelet, incorporating designs from her Apache heritage with materials from Martha's sewing box. The creation, like their relationship, was a beautiful blending of two worlds. Shima, Nasha said softly, using the Apache word now that they were alone. I glad storm bring me here. Martha reached over to squeeze the girl's hand. So am I, my daughter. So am I. As darkness fell, bringing out the first stars of evening, Martha felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. The path ahead would hold challenges, army patrols, suspicious neighbors, the complexity of raising a child between two cultures. But for the first time since Thomas died, Martha faced the future with hope rather than resignation. The lonely widow and the Apache girl had found each other against impossible odds. Together, they would write a new story, one of courage, adaptation, and the enduring power of chosen family in a divided land.